What if everything you thought you knew about ancient Greece was only the surface of a much deeper mystery? We picture shining marble temples, powerful gods, and famous philosophers. But behind the myths and legends was the ordinary daily life of people whose secrets still remain partly hidden. What they ate, how they dressed, and what they believed wasn't just routine. It shaped a civilization that gave birth to democracy, art, and science. Yet many details of their lives are still shrouded in questions. What was it really like to wake up in an ancient Greek city thousands of years ago? Imagine the year is around 450 BC, during what historians call the Golden Age of Athens. The air is filled with the smell of baked bread and olive oil drifting from small homes. Narrow streets are alive with footsteps, vendors calling out at the markets, and the distant sound of hammers in workshops. Families gather in courtyards, children play simple games, and farmers lead donkeys loaded with goods toward the bustling city center. But while daily life might seem simple, it was guided by mysteries that still puzzle historians today. Food wasn't just survival. It was tied to rituals and offerings to the gods. Clothing wasn't just fabric. It revealed identity, class, and even moral values. Beliefs weren't just stories. They were a lens through which the Greeks saw every event in their world, from a sudden storm to the outcome of a war. And here's the real puzzle. For all the knowledge we've uncovered, much about Greek life remains unsolved. Why did some rituals fade away without explanation? What hidden traditions were passed down only in whispers? And could the choices of these ancient people still echo in our lives today? So tonight, let's step into their world. Not as distant historians, but as curious travelers walking the streets of a civilization that shaped history, yet still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. The first mystery of daily life begins at the table. Food tells us more about a civilization than battles or monuments ever can. And in ancient Greece, what people ate wasn't only about hunger, it revealed their values, their beliefs, and even their connection to the divine. Picture a humble Greek household at dawn. A woman kneels near the hearth, stirring a pot of simple porridge made from barley, the most common grain in Greece. The smell of bread, earthy and warm, fills the room. For most families, meals were plain, built around bread, olives, figs, and cheese. Meat was rare, saved for sacrifices and festivals, because it carried a sacred meaning. To kill an animal was to involve the gods themselves. Yet, here lies one of history's puzzles. Ancient writings tell us about great feasts, tables piled with roasted lamb, fish, and sweet honey cakes. But ordinary remains found by archaeologists suggest that daily meals were far simpler, even meager. Were these grand feasts exaggerations, stories told by poets to glorify their cities? Or did common people occasionally share in these rare banquets, leaving little trace behind? And then there's wine. The Greeks didn't just drink it. They mixed it with water in special bowls, believing it was uncivilized to drink it pure. Wine wasn't just refreshment. It was a sacred gift from Dionysus, the god of celebration. Imagine sitting in a dimly lit symposium, the air thick with laughter, music, and debate. Cups are raised, ideas are born, and perhaps secrets of philosophy are whispered that would change the world. But here's the strange part. While wine flowed freely in social gatherings, famine was never far away. One poor harvest could mean hunger across an entire region. How did a civilization so advanced in art and thought still live so close to the edge of survival? The food of ancient Greece holds more than flavor. It holds contradictions. Simplicity and abundance, survival and celebration, sacred offerings and everyday hunger. Behind every loaf of bread or jug of wine lay choices that shaped their destiny. Now let's leave the table and step into their wardrobes. Clothing in ancient Greece wasn't stitched with patterns of fashion. It was woven with meaning. A simple piece of cloth could tell you who a person was, where they came from, and even how the gods might view them. The most common garment was the chiton, a tunic made from linen or wool, pinned at the shoulders and tied at the waist. It was simple, flowing, and practical for the warm Mediterranean climate. Men might wear it shorter, women longer, often reaching the ankles. Over this came the himation, a cloak draped with elegance, worn differently depending on mood, occasion, or status. But here's the curious mystery. There was no concept of fashion, the way we think of it today. Clothing changed little for centuries. Was it because simplicity was valued above vanity, or because tradition was stronger than individual expression? And yet, within these folds of cloth, subtle details spoke volumes. Richer citizens might have dyed fabrics in rare colors like deep purple reserved for the elite, while the poor wore plain, uncolored wool. Even sandals told a story. Some went barefoot as a sign of humility or poverty, while others wore finely crafted leather shoes. Warriors, philosophers, farmers, each left behind traces in the way they dressed. But unlike the statues we admire today, with their idealized beauty, real Greeks lived in garments that bore the dust of the streets, the smoke of the hearth, the stains of olive oil and wine. What makes this even more fascinating is how closely clothing was tied to morality. A well-draped cloak was a sign of dignity. A carelessly worn tunic might mark someone as reckless or disrespectful. Imagine walking through an Athenian marketplace, eyes glancing at tunics and cloaks, silently judging character by the folds of cloth. And yet, hidden questions remain. Did clothing serve as silent rebellion for some? Were there secret ways the poor mocked the rich through subtle choices in dress? We may never fully know. To truly understand daily life in ancient Greece, we must step into their minds, and their minds were filled with gods. For the Greeks, the divine was everywhere. Every stone, every tree, every gust of wind might carry the will of a god or goddess. Life was not seen as random. It was a constant dialogue with powers greater than themselves. Imagine waking up in Athens. Before eating, before even beginning your day, you might whisper a small prayer to Hestia, goddess of the hearth, asking her blessing on your home. Farmers in the countryside would glance at the skies, wondering if Zeus would grant rain or unleash a storm. Sailors setting out from Piraeus would pour a libation of wine into the sea, begging Poseidon for safe passage. And yet their relationship with the gods was filled with uncertainty. The gods could be generous, but they could also be cruel. A victory in battle might be seen as Athena's gift, but a sudden illness could be Apollo's punishment. The Greeks lived in constant negotiation with the unseen. Festivals brought these beliefs to life. Picture the grand Panathenaea in Athens, where thousands gathered to honor Athena with music, sacrifices, and athletic games. A cow or sheep might be sacrificed, its meat shared among citizens, its smoke rising toward Olympus. For the Greeks, this was not just ceremony, it was survival. To neglect the gods was to invite disaster. But here lies a haunting mystery. Even with all their devotion, even with their endless rituals, the gods never revealed themselves. Were these festivals acts of true faith, or desperate attempts to control a world filled with uncertainty? Did the Greeks ever doubt silently in the privacy of their homes? Historians debate this question, but the truth remains hidden in the silence of time. Belief in the gods also shaped morality. Justice was not just a human invention, it was backed by divine law. To betray a friend, to neglect your parents, to break an oath, all these crimes were not just against people, but against the gods themselves. Fear of divine retribution guided choices as strongly as any human law. And yet, beneath this fear, there was wonder. Myths gave meaning to the unknown, explaining why the sun rose each day, why seasons changed, why death came for us all. Children grew up with stories of Heracles, Achilles, and Odysseus, not just heroes, but living reminders that humans could brush against divinity. But the greatest mystery of all is this: Why did they believe so deeply when evidence was never certain? Was it hope? Was it fear? Or was it something beyond both? An ancient wisdom we no longer fully understand? If you truly want to understand a civilization, don't look only at its temples or its wars. Look at the rhythm of its ordinary days. The Greeks, who gave us democracy, philosophy, and epic myths, also lived lives filled with simple routines, small struggles, and fleeting joys. Behind the grandeur of history, daily life was where their world was built, moment by moment. Imagine dawn breaking over Athens in the 5th century BC. The Acropolis looms high, crowned with temples that glow golden in the rising sun, but down in the narrow streets, life begins in humbler ways. The first sound is not the orator in the assembly or the poet on the stage. It is the clatter of a millstone, as women grind barley into flour for the day's bread. The smell of smoke drifts through the air as hearths are lit, the sacred flame tended carefully. For the Greeks, the hearth was more than a place to cook. It was the soul of the home, watched over by Hestia, goddess of family and fire. Inside a modest house, a boy rubs his sleepy eyes as his mother places bread into his hands. He may soon be off to school, where he will learn not only letters and numbers but music and gymnastics. Education was not simply about knowledge, it was about shaping citizens. A girl, meanwhile, stays at home, her small fingers learning to spin wool under her mother's watchful gaze. From the beginning, roles were divided, and the expectations of society weighed heavily on young shoulders. For men, the day depended on class and duty. Farmers rose early to tend to the fields. Imagine a man walking behind his ox, guiding the wooden plow through hard, dry soil. The land of Greece was rocky and stubborn, yielding grain and olives only with great effort. Every furrow was a prayer for rain, every harvest a gamble against nature. A single drought could mean hunger, not just for a family but for an entire community. In the cities, craftsmen worked in small, smoky workshops. Potters shaped clay into amphorae, their hands moving with practiced skill, creating vessels that would carry wine and oil across the Mediterranean. Blacksmiths struck iron on anvils, the ringing echoing down the streets. Shoemakers stitched leather, and carpenters planed wood into smooth beams. Each craft was a vital thread in the fabric of the city, and yet most craftsmen lived modestly, their wealth measured in survival rather than luxury. Merchants gathered in the agora, the marketplace at the heart of the city. If you walked through it, you would be swept up in a storm of voices. Traders shouting prices for figs, honey, fish, and olives. Philosophers standing in small groups debating justice and truth. Travelers sharing news from distant lands. Slaves moved quietly between the stalls, carrying baskets or leading donkeys. To the outsider, the agora was chaos. To the Greek, it was the very heartbeat of daily life. And yet, life was not only about work, it was about honor, status, and reputation. A man who worked hard in his trade also had duties to his city. In Athens, this meant attending the assembly, debating laws, serving as a juror, or even fighting as a soldier when the city called. Citizenship was not a privilege to be taken lightly. It was a constant responsibility. And here lies a paradox. The Greeks admired the farmer, the craftsman, the warrior, but they also glorified leisure, the free time to think, to create art, to discuss philosophy. Work gave survival, but leisure gave dignity. This tension between labor and freedom shaped their society in ways we still see echoes of today. Inside the home, women carried the weight of responsibility. Though often hidden from public life, their work was essential. They managed the household, oversaw slaves if the family could afford them, wove textiles, prepared food, and raised children. In Athens, women were expected to remain largely within the household. Their world centered on domestic life. But in Sparta, the picture was startlingly different. Spartan women were trained in physical exercise, spoke their minds openly, and even owned land. How could one civilization, united by language and religion, hold such different ideas about the role of women? The answer remains one of history's unsolved contradictions. Family life was steeped in tradition. Fathers passed down skills and knowledge to sons, preparing them to take their place as citizens or warriors. Mothers taught daughters the crafts of the household, ensuring that traditions lived on. Respect for elders was absolute. Parents were to be honored not just for love, but because the gods demanded it. A family meal was not only food, it was ritual, a small echo of larger festivals offered to the gods. Children had their share of joy as well. They played with toys carved from wood or molded from clay, rattles, dolls, balls, and even miniature chariots. Boys wrestled in the dusty streets, practicing the skills that might one day make them soldiers. Girls played games with knucklebones, laughing in courtyards while helping their mothers weave. Childhood was precious but brief. By the age of 7, boys in Athens were sent to school, and in Sparta they were taken from their families to begin harsh military training. The shift from play to duty came swiftly, leaving little room for innocence. As the day wore on, the city stirred with activity. The agora filled with voices, the workshops hummed with labor, and the assembly might gather to debate the fate of Athens itself. Yet beneath this lively surface was a life balanced on the edge of uncertainty. Disease, famine, or war could sweep through without warning. A bad harvest might empty granaries. A plague could silence entire neighborhoods. Even the greatest city of the ancient world could crumble in an instant. Perhaps that is why the Greeks clung so fiercely to their routines and rituals. In the steady grind of the millstone, in the careful folding of a cloak, in the morning prayer to the gods, there was a sense of order, an anchor against chaos. They knew life was fragile, and so they wrapped it tightly with meaning. So, when we picture daily life in ancient Greece, it is not only olives, tunics, and temples. It is the endless rhythm of ordinary people carving out existence, bound by duty, faith, and fear of the unknown. A farmer in his field, a mother at her loom, a child chasing a toy down a dusty street, all living in the shadow of gods and mysteries, shaping a civilization that still echoes in our world today. If work and family shaped the rhythm of daily life in ancient Greece, it was entertainment and festivals that gave life its color. The Greeks were not only farmers, warriors, and philosophers, they were also lovers of music, sport, theater, and celebration. To walk through their cities was to feel the pulse of joy, ritual, and mystery woven into the very fabric of society. Let's begin with one of the most iconic forms of entertainment, the theater. Imagine a vast stone amphitheater carved into a hillside, its semicircle of seats filled with thousands of spectators. The air is alive with anticipation. Actors step onto the stage, their voices rising to the heavens, their faces hidden behind carved masks of comedy or tragedy. Plays were more than performance. They were a mirror held up to life, reflecting human struggles, divine punishment, and moral choices. A tragedy by Sophocles might leave the audience silent, reflecting on fate and justice. A comedy by Aristophanes might have the crowd roaring with laughter, mocking politicians, philosophers, even the gods themselves. For the Greeks, theater was not just entertainment. It was civic duty, moral lesson, and spiritual ritual all at once. And yet, a question lingers. Why did a society so deeply respectful of the gods dare to mock them on stage? Was it bold freedom of thought, or was it an unspoken ritual of balancing reverence with irreverence? Historians still debate whether comedy was simple laughter or a mysterious release of social tension. Beyond the theater, the Greeks adored sport. Athletics were not mere games. They were sacred. Picture the Olympic Games at Olympia, held every 4 years to honor Zeus himself. Athletes, oiled and trained, competed in running, wrestling, boxing, and the discus throw. Victors were crowned not with gold, but with wreaths of olive leaves, symbols of eternal glory. For a city, the triumph of one athlete was as great as a military victory. But beneath the glory lies a puzzle. Women were forbidden to watch the Olympics under penalty of death. Why such harsh exclusion? Some scholars believe it was to preserve the sanctity of male athleticism, while others suggest deeper fears about ritual purity. Yet in Sparta, women themselves competed in athletic games, racing and wrestling with vigor. How could one land hold such contradictions? Strict exclusion in one place, bold inclusion in another. The mystery remains. Festivals filled the Greek calendar, blending religion, community, and joy into spectacles of devotion. The Panathenaia in Athens was a dazzling celebration of the goddess Athena. Imagine a grand procession winding through the city, citizens dressed in fine cloaks, musicians playing flutes, priests leading animals to be sacrificed. At the climax, a massive new robe, woven by the city's women, was presented to the statue of Athena on the Acropolis. For Athenians, this was not only ritual, it was identity, proof of unity, and a statement of who they were as a people. Then came the Dionysia, festivals of wine and ecstasy in honor of Dionysus, the god of revelry. During these days, the city seemed to shed its restraints. Wine flowed freely, songs filled the streets, and performances pushed the boundaries of art and faith. Here is where the line between sacred ritual and joyous chaos blurred. Did the Greeks celebrate simply to honor the god, or were they, in truth, channeling something deeper, a primal energy of life and death, control and abandon? And not all festivals were public. Some were secret, held in the shadowy corners of Greek religion. The most mysterious of all were the Eleusinian mysteries. Held near Athens, these sacred rites promised initiates a glimpse of divine truth and perhaps even hope for life after death. Thousands participated, but no one ever revealed the exact rituals. Silence was absolute. Even today, historians know only fragments. Initiates walked in torchlit processions, drank a strange potion, and witnessed sacred dramas hidden from the public eye. What did they see? What secrets were revealed? We may never know, for the penalty of speaking of the mysteries was death. This silence stretches across millennia, an unsolved riddle that teases us from the shadows of history. Music, too, wove through Greek life. The strumming of a lyre, the haunting notes of an aulos flute, the rhythm of drums at festivals, all filled their world with sound. Children learned songs as part of their education. Warriors marched to music, and poets sang verses to the accompaniment of instruments. Music was not entertainment alone. It was harmony with the universe, believed to echo the very order of the cosmos. But here again lies a mystery. Did they believe music could heal the soul, or even the body? Some ancient writers claimed melodies could cure illness or inspire courage in battle. Was this superstition? Or did the Greeks understand something about the power of rhythm and sound that science is only now beginning to rediscover? Entertainment and festivals were more than distractions. They were the glue of society. They united the poor and the rich, the farmer and the philosopher, the soldier and the politician. They allowed laughter in times of hardship, reflection in times of triumph, and meaning in times of uncertainty. They carried people out of the routine of work and into the shared spirit of community. But perhaps the greatest mystery of Greek entertainment is its endurance. The plays of Sophocles are still performed. The Olympics still captivate the world. Even the whispers of the Eleusinian mysteries echo in modern stories of secret societies and hidden truths. Why do these traditions live on while so many others fade into silence? Perhaps it is because the Greeks understood something timeless, that to be human is not only to labor and survive, but to celebrate, to wonder, to play, and to search for meaning in both joy and sorrow. So, when you picture the Greeks at play, do not see them only as athletes or actors. See them as seekers of mystery, using entertainment not just to pass the time, but to touch the divine. And remember, behind the laughter of comedy, the sweat of athletics, the song of music, and the silence of hidden rituals, lies an ancient truth we may never fully grasp. When we think of ancient Greece, we often imagine a world filled with powerful gods, Zeus hurling lightning bolts, Athena guiding warriors, Poseidon stirring the seas. But for the people living in that time, these weren't just stories. They were a part of daily life, woven into every choice, every fear, every hope. A farmer rising before dawn might whisper a prayer to Demeter, the goddess of harvest, before touching his fields. A sailor setting out to sea would pour a small offering of wine into the water, asking Poseidon for calm waves. Even a child, before playing a simple game, might carry a charm or token to feel protected. Religion wasn't locked away in temples. It lived in the streets, the kitchens, the marketplaces. Life and belief were one and the same. And yet, here lies the mystery. Were these gods only symbolic, or did the Greeks truly believe they walked among them? Ancient texts suggest both. Some spoke of gods appearing in human form, testing mortals without warning. Others describe rituals that seem more about community than devotion. What's even more fascinating is how much was left unexplained. Why were some sacrifices performed at night instead of day? Why were certain rituals only open to select groups, their secrets never recorded in writing? The famous Eleusinian mysteries, secret ceremonies honoring Demeter and Persephone, remain one of history's greatest puzzles. Thousands took part, yet not a single person revealed the details. To this day, scholars can only guess what happened in those candlelit halls. And then there's the question of fate. The Greeks believed in the Moirai, the Fates, 3 mysterious sisters who controlled the thread of life. No prayer, no offering, not even Zeus himself could fully escape their will. Imagine living every day knowing your destiny was already woven. Did that make life easier? Or more terrifying? These beliefs weren't just religion. They shaped how the Greeks understood themselves and their world. Storms weren't random. They were signs. Victories weren't luck. They were blessings. Illness wasn't chance. It was punishment, or sometimes a test. In every shadow they saw meaning, and maybe that's why their stories still survive. Because they weren't just myths, they were answers to questions people still ask today. Why do we suffer? Why do good people fall? Is our path already written? Or do we shape it ourselves? So when you look at the ruins of a Greek temple or read the tales of their gods, remember this: you're not just looking at a dead religion. You're stepping into a living mystery, one that still whispers through history, daring us to wonder what these people truly believed, and what they might still have known that we've long forgotten. And so, as we step back from the crowded markets, the smoky kitchens, and the shadowy temples of ancient Greece, one thing becomes clear. The daily life of these people was never ordinary. What they ate wasn't just food, it was ritual. What they wore wasn't just clothing, it was identity. And what they believed wasn't just myth, it was a way to make sense of a mysterious, unpredictable world. Yet, for all the knowledge carved into stone and written on scrolls, so much remains hidden. We don't fully know why certain rituals vanished, or why some traditions were guarded in silence. We don't know how much of their belief was faith and how much was fear. The Greeks lived thousands of years ago, but the echoes of their choices still reach us. Through democracy, philosophy, drama, and myths that never died. And that's the greatest mystery of all, how a civilization so ancient could still shape our lives today. Were they simply ordinary people like us, or did they hold knowledge about the world that we've lost to time? What do you think? Did the Greeks know something we don't? Or are we still chasing the same truths they searched for under the stars? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you believe. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss another story about unsolved history and lost civilizations. And if you're ready for more mysteries, click on the next video waiting for you here, because history isn't just about the past, it is about the secrets that still live within it.